I'm going to introduce you to a wonderful piece by Johann Sebastian Bach called the Brandenburg set of concertos. I'm just going to focus on the third movement of the second Brandenburg concerto. It was written at about the early 18th century. As it was written, it was intended to move audiences. It was intended to move listeners. The trumpet really takes its role up front. You can't miss the high notes, the loudness of it, the brashness of the sound. As soon as it starts off this brash little tune of itself, it allows the string instruments to take over. And then it plays a supporting role. And all other instruments come along with it. Now you'll have to understand, the stringed instruments were made of gut string. They couldn't have sounded very loud. And so it took a really good trumpet performer to be able to give off his best on the instrument and then learn how to work with and support the other instrumental forces in there. And suddenly that tune comes up again. And it's almost a way in which that tone and the theme are one and the same in that space. And it happens in a different kind of key, which gives you a slightly different feel. It didn't sound like the beginning. This one's in the middle. Okay, what am I to expect? I'm anticipating something else. And then it goes on. And before you know it, the movement has come to an end. In a space of roughly about 3 minutes in performance, you have a tune, a fade out. And then the tune comes back again and then it fades out. That tune, that theme seems to have been passed on as if it were a set of musical chairs. And when you've had this idea of the multiple ways in which you can read this movement from the Brandenburg Concerto No. 2, you discover that this is one of the wonderful ways in which a piece like this is worthy of more than one read. What was the first performance of this piece like? We don't know. If you want to know about Johann Sebastian Bach, here was a gentleman who was the last son of a civic town musician. Bach was orphaned early. He was brought up by his elder brothers. He learned to copy music, sometimes illegally in a sense because he was not supposed to touch those manuscripts. But something happened to him when he started copying music older than himself. He started to immerse himself in these ideas. And all of a sudden, there was a way in which he could write that enabled him to traverse space and time. It is almost as if he was rewriting the past into the present. Why might Bach have decided to have written Brandenburg? The motivation was quite simple. He met the Margrave of Brandenburg while he was performing duties for his previous employer. And the Margrave of Brandenburg had heard him. The Margrave of Brandenburg had a retinue of performers. He was sufficiently wealthy in terms of resource, and Bach was hoping for another opportunity at a different way of expressing himself and his skill through a different employer. Interestingly enough, the title Brandenburg is a misnomer. It was originally written in French, and it was titled Concerts for Multiple Instruments. It is almost as if Bach was saying, here's a concerto for an individual voice and yet an individual in a collective of voices. And the challenge here is how to sound good as an individual as well as how to sound good as a collective. Was Bach writing for a ghost orchestra? Clearly not. It was quite clearly for a very proficient group of ensemble musicians. Musicians who could work with these challenges. And so Bach was challenging the frame with Brandenburg. Why is this context fun to know? Because we discover that from this experience, there are so many layers of the way in which the music is written to affect a listener. But the place in which it occurs, the performers it requires, the kind of patronage required to support this kind of composition, the place to support it, to make sure that this piece is given its best possible presentation. That possibility for replication and reading and rereading it simply means that the dynamics of that original context has moved and has enriched far more people and engaged far more people in a deeper reading of this piece.